All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cody Tucker Show, aka my 600-pound life. I'm here, I'm alive. You know, things could be better, things could be worse. I have a lot to go into today, so let's not stand on ceremonies. All right, so first things first. NFL season kicking off. Little tradition I have for myself that I don't think I've done on the show so far is before the NFL season kicks off, beginning of every season, I like to, for fun, try to predict who I think is going to be in the AFC Championship and which two teams I think are going to be in the NFC Championship, predict the winners of those two games, they're going to be in the Super Bowl, predict who wins the Super Bowl. Just to see if by the end of the season, how close am I? In all the years that I've done this, pretty good amount of time, I've only done it once. And no one believes me. No one fucking trusts that I think, oh goodness. I'd have to look it up because I don't remember the year for sure. But there was a year or I think it was like the Buccaneers and somebody was in the NFC, and then like the Chiefs and Bills are in the AFC. Buccaneers and Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, and Buccaneers win Super Bowl. Whatever Super Bowl that was, I predicted that one. So it happened. Scout's honor. I did it. Now, granted, I have never done it before then, and have never done it since. But for, shits and gigs, I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. And we'll see how much of a complete jackass I am. Or if I am a future predicting goddamn wizard. So, my picks for the AFC. So, AFC Championship. Actually, NFC. I'll start with the NFC. Because the NFC, I think, is the easiest one. There's nobody. And granted, I know that this isn't necessarily like a sports podcast. And there are a fucking billion sports podcasts that are much better than I would be at talking about sports. But I fucking love football. And sports in general, but specifically the NFL. And so, yeah, during NFL season, I'm going to talk about the NFL a little bit. Mostly about my goddamn Raiders. And, well, that'll be what I'm going into next. But to kick things off, starting off with the old preseason prediction, which granted, the season, by the time this comes out, the season will have started. But, whatever. So for NFC, easy. Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers. There ain't every other team in the NFC might as well just not even fucking play. And I know everybody around me in my little area is, what about the Dallas Cowboys? The Dallas Cowboys aren't going to the NFC. They aren't going to the Super Bowl every year. Man, this is our year, man. We have so much fucking talent. You have the same talent you had last year. Actually, you have a little bit less talent now. So Dallas Cowboys don't have a goddamn chance at going to the Super Bowl. Will they have a pretty good season, like good record? Yeah. Will they make it to the playoffs? Most likely. They're getting knocked out first round. I would be surprised, honestly, if they finish better than third in their division. Eagles and Giants, I think, could easily have a better record than the Cowboys. Regardless, Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers, that's the NFC Championship. AFC Championship, that's tougher. As much as I fucking hate the Kansas City Chiefs with all of my heart, and I know you shouldn't have hate in your heart, I don't care. I got a little bit of it in there. I mean, I try to put in a little love every once in a while, but there's a little spot in my heart filled with a burning hatred. And that hatred aims directly at a shithole city in the middle of nowhere called Kansas City. And the fucking Kansas City Chiefs. So, with all that being said, with my hatred being very publicized in this episode, they're gonna go to the AFC Championship without a doubt. They're a fucking shoe-in, just like they have been for the past 7 years. Ain't that been that long? 5, 6 years, whatever. Kansas City Chiefs are a shoe-in for the AFC Championship. Now the other team that could go a million other ways. Bills, fucking Ravens could have a shot. Fucking Steelers maybe. Steelers maybe could have a shot. There's a few in there that like could sneak in. It's gonna be the New York Jets. Though the Bills actually could have a shot too. I did forget about the Bills. Ooh, and Bengals. Holy shit. There's like 10 teams that could be in the AFC Championship. No, going with my gut. My gut says the NFC Championship will be San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles. The AFC Championship will be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the New York Jets. The winners of those two games will be, for the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles. For the AFC, oh shit. God, I don't want to say the Chiefs because I fucking hate them so much. Jets, New York Jets. It's going to be the Jets and Eagles in the Super Bowl. Oh, God, that just seems too fucking perfect. I mean, there's no way. God damn it. I shouldn't have even done any of this bullshit. Imagine like I have any kind of fucking... There's no risk in me doing this. So who gives a shit? Okay. Philadelphia Eagles, 49ers. Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. They will be playing the New York Jets. And the Philadelphia Eagles will win the Super Bowl. God damn, that does not feel good in my heart at all. That feels... Boy. It's like, I feel like what you would feel like if you if you like had sex with a hooker without a condom, no protection, at 2 a.m, you don't even know what this person really even looks like. That's kind of how I feel right now. Like the next day version of that feeling of like, oh fuck, I'm regretting everything that I just did. That's how I feel. Actually, pretty much every night that I drink like 2 bottles of Jack Daniels and went and got Taco Bell, that next day, that's basically the regret I'm feeling about picking the fucking Eagles versus the Jets. And the goddamn Eagles winning. No, that's what I'm thinking. They were just too fucking good. Eagles are winning the Super Bowl this year. I mean, the Jets are going to give it to them. Should I predict the score? Ooh. That'd be interesting. Man, if I predicted all this and predicted the score, holy shit. Little Code Stradamus. All right. So I don't know why this is hitting me 35-10. 35-10. Eagles versus Jets. That number just, yeah. Maybe it's divine intervention. Or, satanic intervention. I don't know what it is. But yeah, 35-10. Eagles versus Jets. Super Bowl, was it going to be 58 or some shit like that? Maybe. I think for 50. No, not 58. Maybe 54? Whatever it is. Who gives a shit? All right. So there's the prediction for this year's Super Bowl. We'll see how that goes. Now, time to take a look at, and granted, if you are not a Raiders fan, the next, 6 to 7 minutes, just fucking skip it. I mean, you can watch if you'd like, but this is for me and my fellow Raider Nation, which is probably only about 5 or 6 of you actually watching this bullshit. So, well, we'll enjoy this. So I'm going to take a look at the season, try to predict the Raiders. Let me mark. Try to predict the Raiders' season win-loss. See how I think the Raiders do. Notice I didn't include the Raiders in my anywhere in that AFC Championship breakdown, and this is going to prove why. So Week 1, Raiders play the Denver Broncos. That's this coming, well, from when I'm recording this, that's this Sunday, which by the time this comes out, this game will have already happened. I think Raiders win this one. Oh, God. Week 2, Buffalo Bills. We are getting the shit beat out of us on that one. Week 3, Pittsburgh Steelers. We will also be losing that game. 1, 2, 3. Week 4, LA Chargers. We will be losing that one as well. Well, this is this isn't starting off good. Week 5, Green Bay Packers. Damn. We will. Oh, shit. Green Bay Packers. God damn. We will win that game. Week 6, New England Patriots. We will win that game. So that puts us at 3-3. At 3-3 so far. That's not bad. Then week 7, Chicago Bears. We will lose that game. I know that sounds absurd, but I think the Chicago Bears are going to be very good this year. And then week 8, Detroit Lions. We will be losing that game. Not a chance in hell we are winning against a guy that, is taking so... there's just no way. Week 9, New York Giants. We will lose that game as well. All right, 3-6 so far. Shit, we play the Jets this year. God damn. Week 10, New York Jets. We will be losing that game 100%. Week 11, Miami Dolphins. I'm going to say we win that game. The Dolphins actually are probably going to be pretty good. Week 12, Kansas City Chiefs. We will be... Actually, so we obviously play the Chiefs twice. We're going to beat the Chiefs once, I feel. I think it'll be the first time. So let's just say Raiders win this game. So now we're 5-7. Then we have a bye, thank God. And then week 14, Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, we win that game. Chargers again, we're going to lose. Chiefs again, we will also lose. There's weeks 15 and 16. Then we got 2 more weeks. Week 17, finally, Indianapolis Colts. Fucking a win. Jesus Christ. And then to end off the season, week 18, end off the season. That doesn't sound right. Whatever. Denver Broncos. I'm thinking we win that game. So that puts us at 8-10. Now, that being said, if one were to look at any gambling site, which even though I do not live in a state where sports gambling is legal, I do like to peruse the sites just to see, what these people think is going to happen and see. Now, the Raiders, I think, are expected to win about 5 games this year. The last time I looked, that could be completely wrong by now, but I think the Raiders are expected to win either 5 or 6 games. Actually, I think it's 6. So I'm giving them 2 extra games, which I think is pretty good for a Raiders fan. I don't feel like I'm being too biased here. I know we're going to get the absolute shit beat out of us in most of these games. I think now as I'm looking, so I did pick 8 games to win. As I'm looking at this picture of this schedule right now, I don't know how I came up with that number. Because I'm looking at it right now, and now I see 1 game that we're going to win. So already in the last 5 minutes, I've completely regretted giving the Raiders 8 wins. But that's what I did, and that's what I did. So, my God, this is fucking terrible. But that's going to be it. That's going to be the season this year. So, I'll not talk about fucking football too much through the rest of the episodes. I just wanted to get that one out of the way because if I am right in these predictions, I'm moving to Vegas and all I'm doing is gambling on sports if I'm even remotely correct on any of this shit. But goddamn, now that it's settling in, now that the meal has settled, I kind of feel good about it. I don't feel as bad about my Super Bowl predictions as I did, right then. Like, it's starting to sit better in my gut. So, maybe I'm onto something. I don't know. All right, let's just go ahead and kick into, talking about the news, everything that's going on in the world. There's one real big story to talk about, and that is hold on one second. Yeah, that's this. So, old Danny boy, oh Danny boy, oh, where did you go wrong? So, Danny Masterson, famous for playing, Hyde on Stephen Hyde, right? Yes, Stephen Hyde on That 70s Show. Arguably, I mean, I fucking hate sitcoms. This is one of the few sitcoms I ever enjoyed in life. Danny Masterson sentenced to 30 years in prison in, goddamn, I know YouTube they don't like it if you say that. So, in the R-word trial. Yeah, good. Finally. This fucking prick, Danny Masterson. Now, I have not followed Danny Masterson's life much, except in the last couple of years. Whenever it started bubbling up that he turns out to be a bit of a shithead. And the more I started reading about it, the more I'm like, oh, Danny Masterson there was, obviously like a second where I was like, I don't know, did he fucking do this? Because, I mean, people could say he did, but maybe he didn't. Who knows? And I don't want to like just say like, oh, you should never believe the victim. You should 100%. You should try to be fucking unbiased as possible, no matter what your like preconceptions are, and let the justice system work its way. Work the way it's always going to work. It works so well. Nothing ever goes wrong in with the legal system. So trust that process, and the predators will be punished. The victims will be, victified. Victified can't be. No, victified means you're a victim. Uh-oh. I was thinking victorious. It is odd to me that victory and victim seem like they might come from the same word. Well, know what I'm Googling after I'm done with this bullshit. So, whatever. The victims get their, like, retribution. And the pieces of shit, Danny Masterson, go to prison. Now, if you don't know a whole lot about Danny Masterson, one of the biggest red flags to me about Danny Masterson before any of this really, like, before the trial started, whenever it was just like a thing, was his affiliation with the Church of Scientology. Now, I mean, thanks to the multiple rabbit holes I have gone down exploring the Church of Scientology, I now do not trust any of those motherfuckers. So, when I find out, oh, Danny Masterson has like been in the Church of Scientology for a very long time, hard not to say, yep, he did it. It's hard not to just think, oh, yeah. I mean, this person's a fucking monster. He's a egomaniac, like most of the people in the Church of Scientology, a religion that basically is saying, like, oh, yeah, you're your own God. We rub shoulders with the rich and famous and John Travolta. And, like, I mean, you look at the people who are in it and you're like, God damn, like, these fuckers are in it. Beck, that chick from The Invisible Man, whatever her name is, in Handmaid's Tale, she's I think in it. I mean, obviously Isaac Hayes was in it. I mean, Leah Remini got her way out of there, but like, there's a lot of celebrities that are in the Church of Scientology, and it is a cult. It's a weird science fiction cult, which I myself, being a pretty big fan of both of those things, you would think combining them, and I would be all in. And you would kind of be right. Trust me, I have considered dabbling in the Church of Scientology multiple times. And even with all this shit going on, it hasn't completely gone, out of question. I mean, I might still, pay a visit to a, what do they call it, like a celebrity center? Yeah. I mean, if you're religion has a celebrity center, it's a scam. If famous people go to a different service than the regulars, who anyways are also decently well off because you have to give the church so much fucking money. But yeah, if your religion is a celebrity center, then yeah, it is a scam. So anyways, Danny Masterson 100% did this. I mean, obviously he was found guilty, but that doesn't always mean a person is innocent or guilty. Yeah, he did this. Danny Masterson is such a smug piece of shit. Now, let me show this real quick, because this is fucking absurd to me. So this is an Instagram post posted by Danny Masterson. It says 5 days ago on this. This is from a while back. This is whenever he was going to court. I believe on the first day of the trial, if I'm not mistaken. In this post, you can already just see the smug fucking prick look on his face. But the caption had, "The most beautiful Uber driver dropped me off at school today." You fucking asshole. And he did whatever for the location. Courthouse. Dude, this douchebag. Now, to add to this, hold on a second. To add to Danny Masterson's bullshit here, this woman who he is sitting next to is his wife. If you don't know who this person is, her name is Bijou Phillips. And you can go down a real rabbit hole on her ass. Bijou Phillips may be just as much of a scumbag as Danny Masterson. She was for one harassing the women who were accusing him of raping him, which don't do that. I mean, don't, even if the person is lying, don't harass them back. Don't harass them, because you will not look good. No matter what the outcome, you will look like a piece of shit. Just stay cool. She also, if you just look at the history of Bijou Phillips, she's basically at a time in her life when she was younger, she was kind of like a Paris Hilton type, famous for being famous. I mean, she comes from, famous stock. I mean, I can't remember I don't think it's her dad. Is it her dad? That's Papa John Phillips and Mackenzie Phillips, or Michelle Phillips, whatever. She comes from a family of lunatics. Also big into, Scientology, obviously. But yeah, she is notorious for just being a complete piece of shit. She's been in a few movies. Actually, I did a thing about it. Bully. The movie came out in, I believe, 2001. With Renfro? Just John, whatever. Fuck, I can't remember. Anyways, she was in the movie Bully, where she basically outed one of the castmates, the bigger fella from Mean Girls. Before Mean Girls, he was in this movie. Kind of a, obviously, or maybe not obvious, but he is a homosexual man. But that was not a thing that he was public about when the movie Bully was coming out. He was obviously still in the closet, still having to hide the fact that he's a homosexual. She took it upon herself to just out him to everyone and make fun of him for being, one, for being overweight, two, for being gay. So, and it doesn't look like Bijou Phillips has aged into any kind of wisdom in her life. So there's that. So now, where this story gets more weird is how the cast members of That 70s Show have handled this. So for one, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, who in general people I think look at pretty favorably. Ashton Kutcher has a foundation that helps people, helps women who have been trafficked or victims of abuse. Done a lot of amazing things. That what I'm about to say about Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis is completely independent to the good work that that foundation has done to help these young women who have been through absolute hell. Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis took it upon themselves to write up a letter to send to the judge of old Danny Boy's trial, who are about to, for the sentencing. Here it is. So I will go ahead and read this letter. This is a letter written, obviously, by Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. We have spent hundreds of hours working together. Danny takes his job seriously. He is kind, courteous, and hardworking. He treated everyone from the grips to the teamsters to the actors to the caterers as equals. Aww. He showed up on time all the time and always pulled his weight. We have also traveled around the world together promoting our work. I can honestly say that no matter where we were or who we were with, I never saw my friend be anything other than the guy I have described. While I'm aware that the judgment has been cast as guilty on 2 counts of rape by force and the victims have a great desire for justice, I hope that my testament to his character is taken into consideration in sentencing. I do not believe he is an ongoing harm to society, and having his daughter raised without a present father would be a tertiary injustice in and of itself. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Best, I guess that says Ashton Kutcher. My God. Do you... Okay. The arrogance and just lack of self-awareness it takes to send a letter saying that that your friend Danny Masterson should be getting a much lighter sentence is because he shows up to work on time. Wow. And he treats the less important people just as important as the important people, which no way that's true, because there's a few women who could say otherwise. Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are also the same people who said publicly that they do not bathe their children unless there are signs of visible dirt. So basically, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis' kids are running around like goddamn Oliver Twist, pickpocketing people with like smudges of oil and shit on their cheeks. These are the same people who had the fucking balls to write a letter to this judge and try to get Danny Masterson a lighter sentence for our wording. My God. Now, what's crazy also, the whole cast of That 70s Show was fucking bananas. Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis, obviously out of their goddamn minds. Danny Masterson is an evil human being. Wilmer Valderrama, I think that's how you say it, Wilmer Valderrama, Fez, bragged about banging a bunch of women, including, I think, Lindsay Lohan. So, yeah, his dick probably looks like Freddy Krueger's neck right now. But they all got a pass. Nobody really ever shits on any of these people until recently. The only one who ever got shit on was Topher Grace, Eric Foreman. It turns out he's the only one out of this entire cast who thinks that Danny Masterson's a piece of shit. He hasn't like just publicly, I think, said that. But he ain't writing any letters to the judge asking for Hyde to get a lighter sentence. Topher Grace's wife put like a thing on it, condemning him, saying like they're supporting the victims, blah, blah, blah. Topher Grace, I remember when That 70s Show was, big, all you ever heard about Topher Grace was that he was like some asshole who was difficult to work with, hated being on set, hated his castmates, blah, blah, blah. And so he left the show to go off and do bigger and better things, Spider-Man 3. And, that's that. Well, it turns out Topher Grace might have been the only sane person in that whole damn show. And, besides him and fucking Bob, turns out Topher Grace just didn't like going out and partying. Granted, this is the same show that had Ashton Kutcher fucking making out with a 14-year-old, who, granted, became his wife much later on, which has got to be like the longest lasting, or the most delayed Stockholm Syndrome ever. But yeah, he just didn't like doing shit like that, apparently. So he got labeled as being an asshole. Everyone owes Topher Grace an apology. He knew he knew these were bad, these people were up to no good, making trouble in the neighborhood. So, Stand with the victims. Stand with Topher Grace. Fuck Danny Masterson, Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis, and, somewhat fuckable Murr Valderrama. I mean, I can't say much. If I had the chance to bang Lindsay Lohan, I probably would too. Boy, I would have put about 15 layers of saran wrap on it, though. Jesus. Which I bet he didn't. Alright. So anyways, let's move on. So that's enough about the old Danny Masterson saga. It's a wild thing that I don't know what's all going. It's very interesting, to say the least. So, actually, that'll do it with this. I have some more shit, but I'll save it for next week. My God, I need to take a break. I feel like I'm sweating my ass off right now. I don't know if you can see visible sweat. There's some in there. So I'm gonna go, wash down real quick and come back and, we'll do a little, where the little thing where I talk about movies that people hate but I like. I should know the name of that segment by now because I goddamn invented it, but I don't. So, movies people hate, they shouldn't. This isn't a bit. I really don't remember what I called this segment. Well, I will. I'll be back with that thing. Moment. All right. So, back again with another segment of... Fuck, I forgot to look at what I had called it. Yeah, okay, whatever. A movie people hate that I like. That thing. So this week, I'm going to go over a movie that I have seen, and this is no exaggeration, at least 100 times. Which, again, I got to do that damn 100-time movie club thing because it's a pretty long list now that I think about it. But this is a movie that you wouldn't think a person would want to see 100 times, and you would be wrong because at least one human being on this planet loves this movie enough to see it 100 times. It is the 2012. I probably should have looked that up beforehand. What the fuck? When did this movie come out? God damn it. Something like, I'm going to guess, actually before I look it up, 2012. That's what I'm going to guess. It would be just so much, and I was right. 2012 is the 2012 sci-fi masterpiece directed by Ridley Scott, Prometheus. This movie, so with certain movies, I watch them and immediately think, oh, this is going to be one of the most praised movies of all time. When I went to see Prometheus, at the time I was working in a movie theater, and we had like a 3D version, 2D version. I was like, fuck it, give me the 3D version, which I hate 3D movies. Anyone with glasses, I think hates 3D movies just because it's really not that fun wearing a pair of glasses on your pair of glasses. But still, I was like, fuck it, I want to see this movie that bad. I'm going to watch it probably in both, so let's go and knock out the 3D. Ended up going to watch it, and about halfway through the movie, I'm like, just so mind blown with how incredible this movie is. The effects, the acting, directing, which Ridley Scott gotta be on the Mount Rushmore of greatest directors of all time. I mean, Gladiator, Blade Runner, Alien. He's got the new Napoleon coming out that looks fucking amazing. I think he also did like Hannibal, Body of Lies. Ridley Scott's done a lot of movies. Thelma and Louise. So yeah, Prometheus is like, this is going to be a home run. And as soon as I'm halfway through, I'm like, this movie is absolutely amazing. And it just keeps getting better. I'm like, oh my God. So I see it next day after work, watch it again. And I did that about 12 times. Within a 2-week span, watched it 12 times. And just every time I watched it was at the same time more confused and less confused than the time before. So I would watch the movie and say, wow, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Watch it again the next day and say, okay, now that makes sense. but what about that part? Now, suddenly, this part doesn't make sense. And I think that's what ruined this movie for a lot of people. Because when you read the reviews of this movie, they don't talk about this movie the way I'm talking about it. Most reviews, whether it's critics or audience, hate this movie. They think it's like this pretentious, overly complex, whatever. I don't understand the hate of this movie, which I know is a thing I've said about every movie I've done this segment with, but that's kind of the point of the fucking segment. I don't understand why people... I do understand it if you only watched it one time and did absolutely no thinking about the movie afterwards. This is not a movie that you just like, oh, well, I'm bored, let me just put something on, if you haven't seen it before. Now, if you've seen it 100 times, Exhibit A, yeah, I just flip it on and I'm like, ooh, I like gray metal shit. So, needless to say, I'm going to like this movie. But I can understand if... Like, I took my dad to watch this movie, and goddamn. I look over and this fucker's like, his teeth have changed shape and he's drooling everywhere. And, he basically turned over and the fucker started looking like Gary Busey. Just, so I was like, uh-oh. This was a mistake. But, fucking even he liked it. Granted, I think he was looking at it the same way I was looking at it. Like, ooh, look at the neat space shit. But... Still, this, like all these people, they just like, oh, it's too complex. There's all this bullshit. There's all these questions that aren't answered. I don't mind a movie having questions that are unanswered, but also there aren't unanswered questions in this movie, to me. Like every time I've watched this movie, yes, I have a new question about this movie. Like every time I watch it and really pay attention to it, I'm like, oh man, what about, well, that didn't make any sense. So like I started questioning about it. But then if I think about it long enough, it makes sense. Or like this is actually one of the only movies, one of the first and only movies that I have spent more time reading theories about the movie than ever watching the movie. And granted, this is a movie I've seen over 100 times. So yeah, I've spent more time on like message boards, which goddamn, this sounds so pathetic as I'm saying it out loud. But I'm fascinated by this like world that Ridley Scott created. And the whole like, if, I don't know where we come from. I don't know how we got here. I don't know if there's a God, if it's just fucking chance. I don't know. Was there just a Big Bang and the Earth just happened to come out of it? But then again, what happened before the Big Bang? Whatever that story is, well, what happened before that? If God made it, okay, well, how did God get here? So, I'll end up with a fucking nosebleed if I keep going down that, train of thought. But I do kind of like the idea of engineers. So, and because I am a very, like, religiously ambiguous person, and I don't have one. So actually, I think that's the opposite of ambiguous. I just don't have one. I don't believe in any religion. But I like taking things from religions and saying like, oh, I like that. Or, oh, I like, there's this Hindu belief. Well, that's interesting. I could probably use that in my life. There's this Christian belief. Oh, I could use that, Or like this story, Solomon and the kid cutting him in half. That story is an interesting story to me, so I like it. Now, am I a Christian? No. But I will take from your religion and use it to my advantage, which is a harsh way of putting, what I'm trying to say, but whatever. I like the idea that Ridley Scott makes up within the Prometheus universe and Alien universe altogether too, of there being these engineers, these 9-foot tall fucking mannequins that look like some shit out of a Tool video, who, one of them comes and lands down, drinks some, black shit, and then just starts falling apart. And then bada boom, bada bing, here we are. We're alive and kicking. And they don't like us, so at one point they tried to fuck us up because we, like the story of Prometheus, basically they gave us fire, and we, instead of like using it to, create goodness, we just started burning shit down. And so like, uh-oh, this is out of control. Time to send these terrifying like alien worm things down to just kill all of them. That story is interesting to me. And so their whole, like, and the different characters deal with it in different ways, where, like, one is still pretty religious, even though they met these engineers. She's like, well, who made them? My question exactly. And then, what I would say is so even if you don't care about any of that religious stuff, which, I mean, even in the movie, they talk about, like, how the engineers, how, like, Jesus was an engineer. Which Ridley Scott, I mean, talk about having some goddamn cojones on you there, fella. To be like, oh, I'm going to recreate the Bible in like one sentence. Like, in one sentence, I'm going to completely destroy Christianity in my movie by saying, oh, yeah. And 2,000 years ago, they came back one more time to send one more engineer to see if they could make people a little nicer. And they just fucking killed them. So they were like, final straw, time to send them. Time to, rain hell upon the humans. But even if you don't care about any of that, which is fine. I mean, it's not really fun, but it's fine. How Michael Fassbender isn't more, like, praised for this movie is incredible to me. No one gave a shit about him being in this movie, really, it seemed like. Like, as far as awards go, like, he wasn't getting nominated for shit, but he should have been, because his role as David, and then I think later, was he Walter in the... Yes, Walter in the Alien Covenant. But his role as David in this movie, it's like this weird... I mean, obviously they allude to it quite a bit of like a Peter O'Toole, Lawrence of Arabia. It's like that with like Hannibal Lecter put together and a little bit of like HAL 9000. It's like the amalgamation of every great movie villain and hero put together. Now, he is not a hero, but he is that kind of like, he has like a Lawrence of Arabia vibes to him, and that's why he like quotes like, the trick is not minding that it hurts, like doing all that bullshit. He seems like an actual goddamn android. Like, I don't know what, if Michael Fassbender may not be a real person. Now, if you ever watch Shame, you would know that whoever made the robot Michael Fassbender put a massive hammer on him. So, congratulations. But, yeah, so if you've seen Prometheus, which most people I feel like have seen Prometheus, and maybe 80% of them are like, fuck that movie. That movie was stupid, dumb, it didn't make sense. I implore you to go back and watch it and actually do a little, like, digging. Like, watch it and read, like, I mean, there are people who've written, like, their thesis, like university, like doctorate dissertations, thesis, like all that stuff. There are people who've written that about this movie, and for different reasons, whether it be like religious, like, or mythology, like mythology's connection to film, like in like capitalism, like the horrors of capitalism. Like, I mean, people have taken this movie and done like very interesting breakdowns of what exactly is going on, because every frame of this movie has something in it that, like, explains the movie better. But if you aren't getting it, then this movie doesn't make sense. And so I get that. But just watch it again and watch it. Don't be one of these fucking assholes that's, like, on your phone most of the time and then looking at him and going, what just happened? Fuck all of that. No. Put your fucking phone down. Lock your phone. Take your phone, set it outside, come back in and watch the movie. Hopefully your phone's there when you get back. But if it's not, well, it was worth it. Watch this movie, fucking tunnel vision. And if you still feel like you don't get it, you need to watch it a second time. Like right after. Watch it again. If you still feel like you don't get after that, hit up the old internet and just start reading the internet. And it like opens your brain to so much shit about how fascinating this Ridley Scottian world is. So, well, there's my little opinion on Prometheus, which is a movie, again, that I fucking love so much, and it really drives me nuts that people don't like it. So, that being said, time to move on to Where'd That Come From? All right, here we go. So a little where that come from. This one, I think, hopefully a lot of people like. I feel like people will like this one. So this is one that I've been meaning to do for a while, just haven't done it. But it involves who I think is one of the greatest writers of all time, a fellow named John Milton. John Milton, way back 1700s, long time ago. Writer John Milton wrote Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is this fucking epic, dealing with like hell, God, the fall of man, all this kind of stuff. Like, it is basically mentioned in. It's a serial killer's wet dream for whatever reason. For whatever reason, serial killers love Paradise Lost. I don't know what it is. I mean, mostly because a lot of serial killers are religiously, have like cruel, religious, overbearing parents, and then that turns into all this shit. But anyways, doesn't matter. John Milton writes Paradise Lost, and it is very popular from the time it comes out even to today. Paradise Lost is usually required reading in most schools. I mean, in today's world, it's a tough read for sure. I mean, it took me about 6 or 7 tries to be like, all right, fucking finally finished it and actually kind of have some idea of what's going on in this damn thing. In Paradise, so John Milton, in his own right, is a fascinating person. John Milton, again, just a fucking incredible writer. You could do a whole damn series about John Milton because of this, because John Milton coined a lot of words that we use today. He invented the word fragrance, debauchery. He's the first person to use the term outer space when talking about, outer space. I don't know what the hell they called it before it was called outer space, but he's the first one to call it outer space. He also was very influenced by Galileo, the Italian astronomer, and even went and visited Galileo at one point, and they kind of made somewhat of a friendship, almost like a teacher-student relationship. Regardless, John Milton is very fascinated by the idea of heaven and hell, good and evil, and censorship, all these things that were very hot topics during from the Renaissance into the Enlightenment periods. So he writes Paradise Lost, and Paradise Lost ends up becoming huge, but it also gives us a completely new way of talking, in the sense that John Milton creating these words like fragrance and outer space. Well, he created other words in Paradise Lost. He's invented the word terrific. Now, in Paradise Lost, terrific doesn't mean great, how we call it. Terrific, meaning coming from terrible and terror. Terrific in Paradise Lost means scary and horrifying. But still the first time people use the word terrific. He also, in the book Paradise Lost, John Milton talks about hell, gives a huge, his interpretation of hell that combined with Dante, have become basically what we think of when we think of hell, heaven, demons, Satan, all this stuff. In Paradise Lost, hell has a capital. And the capital of hell in Paradise Lost is called Pandemonium. Pandemonium meaning pan, all, and then demonium, demons. So the place of all demons. So that's what Pandemonium means. It's the capital city of hell. It's where all the demons are. But yeah, obviously we still use it today. Anytime that there's havoc being wreaked, we still call it Pandemonium. Now, to me, the most interesting thing to come out of Paradise Lost, as far as how it affected everything moving on from the time it was written to today, when you think of, so we'll just do a little experiment. When you think of the Garden of Eden, the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, they obviously end up eating this fruit, forbidden fruit, shouldn't have eaten it, but they ate it. When you think of Eve holding a fruit, what is the fruit that comes to mind? Most likely, in your head, you thought apple. It does not say in the Bible that she eats an apple. But every single person, most likely every single person who just did this, thought of an apple in her hand. Why do we think of an apple? There are tons of fruits that grow on trees. Figs, whatever. Figs and whatever. That's about it. There are tons of fruits that grow on trees. Why do we think of an apple? The reason we think of an apple is because Paradise Lost is the story where that fruit becomes referred to as an apple. The reason John Milton refers to the fruit as an apple and not all the other fruits is that the Latin word for apple is malus, M-A-L-U-S, malus. Malus is also the Latin for sin or evil. So the same Latin word has two completely different meanings. It's a pun. It is an old Latin pun that apple and evil come from the exact same Latin word for, whatever reason. I'm sure there's a reason. Whatever. Look it up. But for whatever, so John Milton knew that apple and evil come from the word malice. And obviously we think of like malevolent, malice, like the actual word malice, malcontent, like all these things that are, we think of when we think of like evil, malice. But yeah, so that's why it's an apple. That's why we think of an apple. When you see paintings of the Garden of Eden, it's usually an apple tree they're standing under. And it's usually an apple that she's holding. It has nothing to do with the Bible. Nothing to do with it. Actually, most things that we think of when we think of like heaven, hell, and a lot of the imagery of the Bible ain't anywhere in the Bible. It was written like in the 15, 16, 1700s. That's where most of like our imagery of the Bible comes from. And John Milton played a massive part in that by writing the epic Paradise Lost and using a little Latin pun. So, hopefully you found that interesting. And with that being said, we will move on to, I guess, everyone's favorite, the old half-ass history. All right, time for a little bit of a half-ass history. So, got three vastly different stories, but should be very good ones nonetheless. Words are not my thing. So, first story we're going to go into involves the Apache leader Geronimo, which I'm sure most people know the name Geronimo, maybe just don't know much about him. Actually, may not know that he was a real person. As crazy as that is a thing. But Geronimo was obviously Apache leader, an absolute badass. Geronimo is one of the coolest human beings ever. So Geronimo was kind of like a shaman within the Apache tribe. He was believed to have had supernatural powers. His tribe, the fellow Apaches, believed that Geronimo could slow down time, heal the sick, and then see into the future, but also see things that were happening in other places. At one point, the Apaches were way off, far from, home base. They were on a raid. Geronimo just stopped what he was doing and said, "We're being attacked back home." He saw this vision that the U.S. Army was like basically destroying their, their home. Well, they end up coming back from the raid. Turns out he was right. The U.S. Army had completely destroyed their entire home base. He also was believed to have been immortal by the Apaches. The Apaches believed that he could not be killed. Part of this legend comes from the fact that during a lot of the raids, fighting with the U.S. military, whatever it may have been, or whatever happened, Geronimo would, instead of just doing a full steam charge, and again, you have to remember, this is a time where it wasn't like what we think of when we think of like Western films, or ever like guns versus bow and arrows. Most of the Apaches had guns as well, or not most, but a lot of the Apaches had guns as well. So it was a lot of like, gun on gun fighting. Geronimo did not like guns. Had a like very difficult time trying to learn how to use one. So said, "Fuck it, I'm sticking with my knife." Geronimo would charge in a zigzag pattern until he was close enough to the U.S. soldiers to where he could just stab them to death. And he never got shot. All this time just charging like a fucking maniac. Never got shot. So the fellow Apaches were like, oh my God, Geronimo is immortal. So they had this like weird, like, not a worship of him, but they just had this, like, they put him on this, like, pedestal of being a superhuman. Now, obviously, if you know even a little bit about history, the U.S. government and the Native Americans did not get along too well. And the U.S. government, saw fit to basically just take them all out. Geronimo, at one point, was being hunted down by over 5,000 U.S. Army members, which at the time was about a quarter of the U.S. Army. So at one point, a quarter of the U.S. military their job was to hunt down this one person, Geronimo. And as sad as it is, he finally was captured by the U.S. Army. When he was captured, he became a prisoner, like a prisoner of war. As he was a prisoner, the U.S. Army did allow him to basically get shipped around the country as basically a sideshow attraction for these Wild West shows, with like Wild Bill Hickok, Annie Oakley, these like very, very popular, like old time versions of like rodeos and like carnival attractions, but they were all Wild West themes. He has already had this reputation within the country as, being this like warrior. And the reputation was that he was brutal. And there is some truth to that. I mean, Geronimo was not exactly a peaceful person. Now, granted, you could make, the argument that, well, fucking leave him alone. He's doing his thing. We need to mind our own fucking business. You can obviously make that argument. But there are definitely stories of Geronimo doing horrible stuff to people. And a lot of innocent people. So, look at it in a little bit of a, balanced way. But Geronimo is on these Wild West shows, and his name, as the name of his attraction is the Apache Terror, which is, probably the greatest wrestling name of all time. Had wrestling existed back then, like professional wrestling, it'd be the greatest gimmick of all time. And part of his thing, like, they would just basically show him off. It's actually pretty gross when you think about it. But he would, like, make walking sticks and sell walking sticks, and that's how he'd have, like a little bit of money. A pretty shit life for Geronimo once he's captured. Now, granted, he's not in prison 24/7, but still, it is not great for Geronimo. But he becomes, like, he has, like, kind of an adverse effect than what the U.S. military has. So the U.S. military looked at Geronimo as being public enemy number one. Most of the people in the U.S. loved the dude. They were like, this guy is incredible. Like, he's got superpowers. Like, he looks like he became a living legend amongst people in the U.S. So much so that when Teddy Roosevelt was elected president, Geronimo was part of his inaugural parade. Like, Teddy Roosevelt was in love with this dude, was like fascinated by Geronimo. But it's also because Teddy Roosevelt, no matter what group you're in or whatever, had a real hard-on for people who were warriors. Like, Teddy Roosevelt fancied himself a warrior. So naturally, Teddy Roosevelt's going to be drawn to a person like Geronimo. So all this happens in Geronimo's life. He ends up dying in 1909. 8 years after he dies, he's buried. 8 years after he dies in 1917, members of Yale University's Skull and Crossbones Society, members of Yale's Skull and Bones Society do a little, decide to go on a little raid of their own. And the legend is that the members of Yale's Skull and Bones Society, this creepy cult, like basically, if you think that the Illuminati is real, that's where you start at, is Skull and Bones. But regardless, the old Skull and Bones fellas decided to go on a raid of their own. And the legend is that they raided the grave of Geronimo and stole some of his bones, including his skull, which they would bring back to their temple at Yale University, and it became part of the rituals of the Skull and Bones Society to drink from Geronimo's skull. That is the legend. One of the people who was allegedly part of this raid in stealing Geronimo's skull was a fella named Prescott Bush, grandfather of George W. Bush, father of George H.W. Bush. So, there's a good one, old Geronimo. All right, so next one. So, still staying in the U.S., back in the 40s, there was a fella named George Stephen Morrison. George Stephen Morrison, a soldier, enlists into the Navy, goes into the Naval Academy in 1941. He ends up getting sent to Hawaii. Now, if you're not exactly a history buff, actually most people should know that at that time in Hawaii, an event happened that changed everything in the U.S. The event was Pearl Harbor. George Stephen Morrison was a naval officer at Pearl Harbor and witnessed Pearl Harbor. He obviously survives and immediately is sent to the Pacific to fight in World War II. He fights in Japan. He has a very successful career in the Navy during World War II. Ends up working his way up the ranks, and he ends up even getting involved in the nuclear weapons program. And if you watch Oppenheimer, he's not a character in Oppenheimer, but that level, those types of guys, that's what George Stephen Morrison was doing, right towards the end of World War II. It's he is heavily involved in the nuclear power, and heavily involved in the nuclear weapons program. Now, fast forward, say about 20 years, tensions have started to rise between the U.S. and North Vietnam. And it is looking like we are going to be involved in a war in Vietnam. A lot of people are not happy about that. World War II is not that far ahead. We had the Korean War in between that also was not very popular. So it's not a popular idea for us to get involved in Vietnam. But something needs to happen for us to get involved. And an event happens known as the Gulf of Tonkin. When you look at what really kickstarted the Vietnam War, it is almost single-handedly pointed to this one event. Now, obviously, there's a huge amount of events that lead up to a war. It's usually not just one thing, because even that one thing had a bunch of things leading up to it. But the Gulf of Tonkin is usually considered the starting point of the Vietnam War for us. George Stephen Morrison was the commander of the naval forces during the Gulf of Tonkin. So ends up being part of Pearl Harbor, part of the nuclear weapons programs, ends up basically leading the Gulf of Tonkin. Now, when that happens, George Stephen Morrison has a son who basically wants nothing to do with his father. A couple years later, is living out in California, decides to make a band. The band he makes is called The Doors. George Stephen Morrison's son is James Jim Morrison. So, yeah, there you go. One of the legends of the 60s, rock movement's father basically started the Vietnam War. Yeah, nice. All right. So last one I'm going to do, this is just going to be a bunch of random stories about a single person who, my God, you could have an entire podcast dedicated to the shenanigans of this fella. Now, the fella in question is a god among men. He is, I would say, the founder of heavy metal music, one of my idols, a fella named Ozzy Osbourne. So, when doing a little dive into Ozzy Osbourne's life, drugs play a big part in just the craziness that was Ozzy Osbourne's life. Now, everybody knows, I think, like, biting the head off a bat, biting the head off a dove. Even a lot of people now know the story of him, like, licking up ants off of, like, piss from the dudes in Motley Crue. Like, there's a lot of Ozzy Osbourne stories that are now pretty well-known, rock and roll legend. So I'm going to go through a few that are not as well-known, but actually kind of crazier. So one, before Ozzy Osbourne was ever famous, he worked in a factory. Part of the job, his role at the factory, was dunking metal into these giant vats of chemicals. Ozzy Osbourne began to not really enjoy his job. And, these are guys that are having to wear these giant gas masks, basically, to protect themselves from the fumes of these highly toxic chemicals that they're dunking this metal into. Heavy metal, if you will. Ozzy starts developing a little bit of a habit of every once in a while lifting up his mask, taking a big whiff of the fumes, temporarily kind of like going loopy, and then going back to his job. Like, that's how he kind of gets through his day. Well, as you might imagine, his tolerance starts building up real quick, and at one point, it kind of reaches the tipping point. So at one time, people are like, where the fuck is Ozzy at? And they go look for him and find that he has now lifted his mask up and is now passed out, hunched over the barrel of toxic fumes, and has been breathing them in for God knows how long. So then he ends up leaving that job with who knows how much, lifelong damage. At one point, he also took acid and talked to a horse for over an hour, which is an interesting story in itself. Now, there's a bit of a darker side to these drug stories, and one involves... this one is rough, and even though I'm a massive Ozzy fan, boy, this one's tough. So at one point, Ozzy Osbourne, living with his wife, Sharon, as we all know, Ozzy is real messed up on drugs. And at the time, Sharon Osbourne owns 17 pet cats. Well, Ozzy, in a fit of rage and like just a drug psychosis, grabs a shotgun and a butcher's knife and shoots and kills all 17 of her cats. And Sharon Osbourne finds him hiding under a piano wearing a solid white suit that is now covered in blood with a shotgun and a bloody knife. And is just out of it. That's not a good one. That's not good. Yeah. But I had to throw that one in there because, oh my God, that's a crazy one. Now, the last story they'll do about old Ozzy, last one, and we'll end it on a funnier note because that one's dark as shit to me. But, he also tried to kill Sharon Osbourne one time while he was blacked out. He believed that voices were talking to him and telling him he needed to kill her. And then he kind of came to in jail with one of the guards, the jail guards telling him that he had he was arrested for attempted murder. Yeah, so the drug use got pretty bad. It wasn't all fun and games, talking to horses and shit. But the last one I'll go through, when Ozzy was in Black Sabbath, in 1972, they were recording an album in this house. And this is at a time when Black Sabbath, if you could listen to their music like 70s, like around this time versus like their first couple albums, there's a noticeable difference, and that difference is due to cocaine. Cocaine began to play a large part in the life of Ozzy Osbourne and the fellas in Black Sabbath. And in 1972, while they're recording this album, they, on their coffee table, have a giant crystal bowl full of cocaine. And I mean like a big bowl full of thousands of dollars worth of cocaine just sitting on this coffee table. Almost like goddamn potpourri. Now, Ozzy starts feeling really hot, which is either because the house is hot or he has been snorting cocaine endlessly for like months. It could be a little column A, a little column B. Ozzy ends up walking over to the wall where there's a panel on the wall, turns down the AC, like trying to crank it down a little bit, cool off. About 5 minutes later, he hears police sirens and sees 5 police cars coming up the driveway and is like, oh shit, we're being raided. Like, they know we have drugs. This is bad. He grabs the bowl of cocaine, runs to the bathroom, ends up dropping it on the, he's going to dunk it down to the toilet, ends up dropping the bowl of cocaine onto this like shag carpet square in the bathroom. He's like, oh fuck. So he gets down and just starts snorting this mound of cocaine, like just snorting as much of as possible, and ends up snorting like damn near the whole bowl. Like a highly deadly amount of cocaine is being snorted by Ozzy Osbourne at this time. Like, who knows how many I mean, just an insane amount of cocaine being snorted by Ozzy Osbourne. And he's just trying to get rid of evidence for this raid. Well, turns out the police were not there for a raid. What had happened was that Ozzy Osbourne, going over to turn down the AC, didn't know what the hell he was doing and ended up pressing the button on the wall that was the emergency silent alarm button that immediately notifies the local police that there is a real emergency at this house. So that's why 5 police cars come zooming up the driveway to this house. And so Ozzy Osbourne has just snorted all of their giant bowl of cocaine for no reason. He had snorted so much coke at this time that he ends up staying awake, wired to the gills for 4 days in a row. So yeah, that's some Ozzy stories. Hopefully, you enjoyed these stories. I love doing it. It's fun shit. So go buy a t-shirt again. Go to the damn merch store, buy some shirts, magnets, hats. I don't give a shit. Stickers. Buy some stuff. Fucking, help a brother out here. But with that, that'll end this episode. Send in some, comments, some emails to you can email the pod at the Cody Tucker Show at gmail.com. Send in any questions, fucking, audio message, whatever you want to say. If you have a topic you'd like me to talk about, send it in with your name. I'll read it off, do a little talk, whatever. But yeah, that'll do it. So until next week, goodbye.